All right, welcome back to another episode of Nemo Radio. This is also Nemo Video. I am so excited to bring this gentleman back on the podcast, mainly because I get to taunt Nigel Green, who is a diehard Auburn Tigers football fan. My beloved, and yes, I'm a bandwagon fan, but my beloved Golden Gophers, Nigel, defeated you in a bowl, which I'm still stunned about, but I'm rowing the boat. I'm rowing the boat.
Welcome.
There's a new term for what. Thank you for having me back. There's a new term for when you lose to Minnesota, you get boat road.
Trade PJ Fleck will have that trademarked before this podcast is finished. That guy talking about monetizing your brand. That guy's all over it.
I'm seeing other teams use that when they get blown out. They're saying we got boat road. Oh. So there you go. Thank you, PJ Fleck, for a new lexicon in the football world.
Oh my gosh. Well,
and if you're listening, getting boat road's not a good thing. You don't really want it. It's not good.
No. And Nigel is War Eagle all the way, SEC through and through, Auburn baby. So Bama fans can tune out right now. But I've known Nigel for years. He's one of the sharpest people I've ever met around topics like leadership and sales, building a team, and he's got a new book out called Revenue Harvest that I want to talk about. But first I want to just introduce you a little bit with kind of Nigel's former, there's nothing in here about Auburn, but there should be in your bio because you are the biggest Auburn fan I know. But let me read for people listening and watching right now, kind of Nigel's background, and then we'll get into your story too. But I love the intro of Nigel Green's bio. It says, hope is not a sales strategy. Nigel Green is someone that helps investors, executives, and sales leaders of fast-growing companies eliminate chance and create, and I love this, predictable sales growth, especially for B2B companies investing in sales growth. Nigel's going to be your guy for strategic initiatives. He's done a lot of amazing things, and he won't brag, so I'll brag for you, Nigel. But for 3 years, he was the VP of sales for Foundations Recovery Network. He helped grow that business from $94 million to $350 million. That's some rowing of the boat. That's a positive right there. He was also the CEO of Story Brand, Donald Miller's company, which a lot of my listeners and audience know Donald Miller well and Story Brand. Nigel was the guy running the show there. So he's been on other teams at Reload, all kinds of different places. He's got over 15 years of experience leading sales and marketing for Fortune 500 countries. You're kind of a big deal, man. So I'm really honored to have you back on the program.
Where's this guy you're talking about?
Well, let's do this because what's so fun about you, and I'll go all the way back to the beginning. When I met you, it was at a Ray Edwards event, and I think you came on behalf of Story Brand at the time. I came just because I was able to do enough affiliate sales, and I was like, Nigel Green. I was like, well, he must be some British guy, right? So let's start there because I thought you were some fancy pants British guy, but you're a good old boy from the South. Take us through your journey before we get into Revenue Harvest and really helping people understand how to build dynamic and predictable sales teams. I want to hear your journey, and I want our listeners and viewers to kind of hear your backstory because it's fascinating.
Wow. Well, thank you. So I grew up very humble beginnings in the state of Alabama, and football is everything in Alabama. I mean, it's literally when you try out for the high school football team, they ask you, do you want to play basketball? And if the answer is yes, you're automatically cut because if you go to the playoffs in football, it's going to interfere with basketball. So they don't want you even thinking about basketball. So that football is everything. So it's shaped the way I think about work and planning. And it's really had an indelible impact on my life and my career. So football got me into college. I went and played football at a small school in Tennessee. And that opened my eyes because growing up in humble beginnings in Alabama and then getting thrusted into this private school in Tennessee where everyone seemingly comes from a lot of money unless you play a sport and you get a scholarship. And so I got to see the way the smaller part of the world that has money and resources live. And one thing I learned about that part of the world is that nothing works better than having money and putting money to work. And so I got to couple knowing the power of having resources and then having this undeniable work ethic. And when you put that together, it can be an unstoppable force. And what we're seeing now, and I think that's really relevant in this time where a lot of people that are scared, this pandemic has been very disruptive to the marketplace. But there's this small segment of business leaders that are excited about this because it's going to flush out a lot of noise. It's going to eliminate a lot of competition. And when there's blood in the water, there's money in the streets. And so that's, I think that's what's really timely about revenue harvest and my background. And I think that's what we should talk about today for everyone that's listening.
I love that. And I love too the mindset that you have. You're one of those people that I think of, you wake up every day, you don't see obstacles, you see opportunities. And I think that's the mindset shift I want people to really engage around this. So I want to hear more about your journey because I think that's so important for people. How did a guy who kind of grew up in Alabama, played some football, how do you end up growing a company how do you even start at a company that's 90 million to 350 million? How do you become CEO of Story Brand? Like, you've had all these big accolades and accomplishments. People always want to know how did you do it? Was it networking? Was it, hustle? What was kind of your secret to, finding success, getting in positions of influence maybe?
Yeah, so it's probably a little bit of all of that. It starts with having a plan. I didn't just fall into being the CEO of Story Brand. I knew that I was going to run a company. I didn't just fall into leading a large sales team. That was the plan. And so when you have a clear plan, and going back to the bio, hope is not a strategy. Hoping to be the CEO of a company is not going to work. But when you can take the plan, beginning with the end in mind, this is where I want to go, and then reverse engineer it and say, in order to do that, these steps have to happen, sometimes sequentially, sometimes not, then it happens. And so for me, the only thing that I was going to be able to do with C's out of college is go sell something. I wasn't going to be an engineer. I wasn't going to be a scientist. So I took a job in sales, and it just happened to be in healthcare. And then that's where football kicked in. When you're on a sales team, yes, there is a collective goal, but you got to compete. And if you can't compete with yourself, and if you can't compete with others on your team in a healthy way, you won't make it. And so 15 years of football taught me how to compete in a healthy way that was collaborative, that was pulling everybody along in a productive way. Uh, and then I separated myself from a lot of my peers. And so when you have the intangibles and then the work ethic, you get recognized. And so I had a chance to lead a team at a young age. And one of the first things I did was call some of my old coaches and say, okay, now I'm responsible of getting people from all walks of life with all different types of motivations and priorities. But we got to do this one thing, and we got to do it well. How do you do it? And I just went to school on these coaches telling me what to do, how they think about leading, how they think about goal setting. And I was able to develop my own kind of recipe. And I think Pete Carroll was probably one of those guys that has his own kind of recipe. Tony Dungy, and it's this recipe of positivity and motivation doesn't really work. Motivation's like a bath; you got to have one every day. So how do you go deeper with people, and how do you find not what motivates them, but what do they want? And then when you can figure out what people want, and then you can attach your goals to their outcomes, that's when you're leading people well. And that's really in its simplest form what I did at Foundations and what we did at Story Brand is people they want to communicate with clarity. They want to grow their business. Okay, well, we got to anchor that outcome with something that we're offering them, and that's when things happen.
Yeah, you just channeled a little Zig Ziglar. There's a great line he has. You can get everything you want out of life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And one of the things that's fascinating about your approach to training sales teams is, and I've worked with a few other sales trainers, and they talk about, and maybe you've encountered this struggle too with when you consult for, sales teams and managers, is superstar salespeople often really stink or struggle as managers and team leaders. Because one of the analogies I heard from another sales manager that I've worked with was that's because they're like a star athlete that's like then has to become the coach. They're like, just do it like I do it. And so how did you escape that trap as a manager and then, leading the team? And then how do you advise your clients who promote a sales star to escape that trap, avoid that pitfall?
So that's a really good question. I think, I'll say I never was a superstar sales rep. Always hit my number, but I was never the guy that was going to set company records and just be, a real quota buster month in and month out. I found that the vast majority of them are pretty self-involved, and they leave a trail of dysfunction and problems behind them. So they're going to do anything to get the deal done.
Hmm.
What I think makes a good sales leader is someone that's not going to sell anyone that's already a no. And let me unpack that. So if I knew that you weren't going to buy from me, I wasn't going to spend a lot of energy trying to convince you of that. But that doesn't necessarily work when you're a leader, because you got to get everybody on board. You got to get everybody that may be a no to a yes. And so I think the shift is recognizing that it's not so much about getting the deal done, but it's about being patient and meeting people where they are and helping them make sense of all the things that they could do, versus, those top performers are just, no, it's binary. It's yes or no. If it's, we got to get the deal done, and I'm going to convince you to get it done. And that
All right.
doesn't really work with leading people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me. And you have kind of, I love your ability to simplify this in a way that is very digestible for anyone listening or watching. And so that's perfect segue into the book. This is brand new. It's called Revenue Harvest, a sales leader's almanac for planning the perfect year. And it's got kind of the farming theme and, the harvest. And I know you've got a nice piece of property outside of Nashville. So you do like outdoor guy, hunting, fishing. So take us through the book, what inspired this, and kind of the themes within. I'm curious to hear.
So in 2016, we started spending a lot of time in a rural part of Kentucky, about an hour outside of Nashville. We acquired some land, and we were coming up here on the weekends. In 2018, I decided that if I had stayed in Nashville, what I was working on was going to continue to work on me in a way that I didn't like. I didn't like the person I was becoming. So we pulled the plug and we moved here full time. And living in a farming community, I mean, everywhere I look, I see crops, not mine, but someone else's crops. When I go to church, I'm surrounded by farmers. When I go to the grocery store, I mean, this is, I think in 2019, this county in Kentucky had the largest corn crop in North America. So that gives you some context for what I'm living in. Every year, they have to produce a crop. And if they don't, they're not a farmer. So they lose their identity. And so to me, it became undeniable the parallels between the farmer and the sales leader. If you lead a sales team and you don't hit your number, you're not a sales leader for very long. And so the farmer goes into the growing year, and there are all these things that he's not going to be able to control. Too much rain, not enough rain. Too hot, too cold. He can't control the market. He doesn't get to set the price on his product. Those are a lot of the same types of circumstances that sales leaders find themselves in. And it won't work to go tell your CEO or tell your board or tell the stock market in June that you're not going to hit December's number because of all these other reasons. They just don't care. They want you to hit the number. And so that's the premise of the book, is that if you really want to be a sales leader that can stand the test of time, there are a lot of principles that we can take from our farming community that year in and year out produce a crop despite all these uncontrollable factors.
I love this, man. And you talk about in the book, and I'm just looking through the contents, 7 principles that yield a successful revenue harvest. And obviously, I don't want to have you read the whole book here on the video, but as much fun as that might be. But let's unpack a couple of these principles, because I think one that really comes out to me and jumps out to me is kind of, starting from the beginning, the planning principle, because so many of us, whether we're leading a sales team, whether we're running our own business, whether we're a salesperson out prospecting, we just want the harvest, man. I just want the results. I want the dollars. I want the sales. I don't want to do the prep work. And I feel like that's one of the things that you're so good at is, the plan is the way. Hope is not a strategy. So take us through that planning principle. That's the first one you list in the book. What goes into that, and what are the core elements are?
Well, okay. So a lot of leaders, a lot of small business owners are finding out right now in this economy what Dwight Eisenhower said about battle. The plan is useless. Planning is indispensable. I don't know a business leader or a sales leader or an executive that didn't come into this year with a plan. I also don't know of many leaders that are still working that plan. So what planning and what that entire principle about is, it's exercising the muscle of contingencies, not just considering adversity, but expecting adversity and thinking through how you're going to respond to it. And that's what farmers do well. That's what leaders do well, is that they know at some point in this growing season, in this harvest season, something's going to happen to my business that I couldn't have possibly planned for. What am I going to do?
Like a global pandemic. Like, nobody came into 2020 going, yeah, there's going to be this insane virus that's going to limit my ability to literally get in the same room with anyone. Like, nobody had that. I'm sorry, but unless you were really ahead of the curve. So talk about that. Talk about how you have to pivot and reinvent.
Well, so positioning, which is the second principle in the book, is really a leader's tool in times like this. Okay, the plan's no good. Okay, so we can't get romantic about the plan. We just have to fall in love with the outcome. Okay, so now the plan's no good, so we have to reposition ourselves. So we have to think through, what are the things that we need to do differently? What are the variables that we could manipulate to get the outcome, to get the harvest? So we have to reposition resources. That means you can't see people eyeball to eyeball, so you have to do Zoom. That means if your job was being in front of customers, and a lot of my clients are in healthcare, and it's their job to be in the hospital, and the hospital says, you cannot come here. You don't have a job. So what do you do now? Those types of things require you to reposition the team, reposition resources, and rethink how you're going to get the outcome.
I love this. I love it. I want to hit on another principle because, there's so much good stuff. There's so much gold in this book, and I want everyone to get it and give it a good, thorough read, because there's so much. Talk about the plant principle, because this is interesting. You talk about, the different categories in here, what happens when your team stops planning, how to define your team, generalists versus specialists, why it's so important to always be planning. Take us through some of those kind of principles inside of there.
So our friend Mary Lou Tyler,
Yes,
you've had on the show.
She's awesome.
Yeah. Well, she's the queen of planting.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
You won't find, and I even say this in the book, it's the plant chapter is the shortest chapter in the book, because I tell people, if you want to get good at this, you just need to know Mary Lou Tyler. You need to read her stuff, and you need to do everything she tells you to do. So, but the point for leaders, because this book really, John, is for executives and leaders of teams, not the frontline producer, not the sales reps. What I want people to understand is that everybody has to prospect. Okay, so maybe you're at a place in your business where you have a sales team, and you expect, and maybe this is a form of entitlement that you need to address with yourself, but you expect that there's just going to be this durable pipeline of leads, and you're always going to be able to have opportunities and prospects that you can work on. Everybody plans. Every leader is responsible for getting out in the field, getting dirty, rolling up your sleeves, and putting some seeds in the ground. There's something about the message it sends to your customer when you get in front of them and you don't delegate the whole prospecting function to someone else. It shows them that you care in a way that there's literally not many things you can do that says, I care so much, by the CEO or the VP showing up to a meeting. And a lot of them don't. They hide in their office. They're looking at reports. They're too busy answering calls from the board, and they're not in front of the customer.
I think too, this is a critical element. I'm getting to a place in my business where I've traditionally done all my own sales and prospecting and everything. So, but as I look at bringing on people to grow my company, to grow my team and outsourcing that, you're totally right. That sense of entitlement of, well, now I get to sit back. Like I don't have to do anything, right? It's just magically people are going to care more about my company than I will. Like, but I think too, there's a danger in removing yourself from the field and from the front lines of your business. There is a significant danger in staying in your office too much because you start to lose your edge of what people are really saying. And one of the strengths that you talk about, Nigel, that's actually one of the opening lines of your book. The only credit I can take for the success I've had is I've listened well to people. I've listened, right? And so you can't outsource that. You can't outsource listening to customers, listening to prospects, being involved, having conversations. Isn't that kind of what you're talking about here?
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things that we get to later in the book is that there is a responsibility of the leader to be the voice of the customer inside the company and to the board and to the executive team. Because what happens, and this is kind of an intermixing of harvesting and planting and tending, which is another principle of the book, and then the positioning principle. We get mispositioned because we fall so much in love with our product that we're no longer in love with the customers that we want to have. So we
Mm.
think this product's great, but we're not listening about a refinement or a new competitor that does something better or cheaper or gives something away for free that we charge for, and the market's moved and we're mispositioned because we're not listening anymore. And that's only the sales leader can do it. A sales rep can't go sit in front of the CEO in most companies and say, my customers are asking for this and we got to do it. Well, there's all these bureaucratic steps that have to happen. But if I'm the VP, I walk right into my ops leader and say, this is what we're doing. And they say, yep, we're doing it. Okay, that's what we're going to do. I trust you that you've aggregated and you've built enough consensus and the data's there to support that all these customers and all these markets want it. So we're doing it. So you fast track customer feedback in a way that your team can't do.
I love this. I love this. So I want to shift gears a little bit, hop out of the book a minute and hop into your brain. So obviously, you're a consultant now, you're consulting with big companies, you're helping them. What does your process look like when a sales leader comes to you? Let's say it's a big healthcare company, whatever, and their hair's on fire and all these problems and help, help, help. What's your process? What are you looking for? What are you walking someone through to kind of start your engagement to help them? I'm just curious what that process looks like from your end.
Yep. So I have a product. It's called a sales team review, and it's where I start with all of my customers. This product was created because I've uh, led a sales team for a Fortune 300 company. I have led the company of a small business. I've started two companies of my own that are successful, and then I've had the chance in my consultancy to go work with multinational companies that have sales teams and go-to-market strategies that are sophisticated or simple, ranging in size of complexity. The ones that win year in and year out do the same thing. They may call it something else. It may wear a blue shirt instead of a black shirt, but it's the same thing. So I've had the privilege to go study all these companies and say, here are the things that everybody's doing well. So what the first thing I do with my clients is we get together in a room for an entire day. So there's some prep work before this day happens, and then we all get in a room. By the end of the day, they find that they have new goals, new job descriptions for their people, a new sense of excitement about what they can achieve with their sales and marketing team, new tools to help support the team, uh, all these things that give them a better sense of, um, security and confidence that they're going to hit their number. So that's what we do. And so we spend a day doing that. There are deliverables that come out of that meeting that can be done today. There's some that are going to be an 18-month lift. There's some that you're going to see in 30 days, but you're going to leave those days. My clients leave those days with a very clear roadmap to how to build a team that's durable and can handle just about anything.
I love it. I love it. It's such a smart way to start, like, because I'm always curious how you kind of take the temperature and get your hands around it. So, in your experience with all these kind of high level companies and even small businesses you've done work with, are there any kind of core problems you see over and over and over again?
That's the best question you've asked all day, because I think it's most applicable to people. People are listening here and saying, okay, well, maybe I do a sales team review, maybe I can't. Give me one thing, okay? What I see most often, particularly with businesses where the founder is very involved in the selling. So I say you're doing anywhere between $500,000 a year and $3 million a year. They have this goal to go from 3 million to 4, or maybe it's 3 million to 6. What they haven't done is assign that revenue to their customers. Let me tell you what I mean by that. You've got this idea that you want to do 5 million in sales and you did 3 million last year. What you're not doing is going back to look at that 3 million that you got from last year and reassigning those dollars back to them. Who's going to do business again? Who's not going to do business, and why? What can I sell them that's new? So you've got to do that level of attribution. If you want to make up 2 more million in revenue, and you don't have 3,000 or 4,000 prospects, that we got a sophisticated sales funnel. We know sequentially how to get them from unaware to buying, and you can't assign them at some stage in that pipeline. You got no shot at getting to that number. It's just hope. So what we do is we take every dollar that they need to make over the course of the year. We break it down into smaller tranches, whether it's quarterly or monthly or weekly and sometimes daily. And then we start assigning it to customers. That's the best thing you can do. If you want certainty that you're going to hit your number, go into each month and say, if I got to do 50,000 in sales this month, what are the X number of accounts that need to buy these products, and where are they in their stage, and beat your pipeline to pieces.
I think that's brilliant. And I think that's something that I'm in that category that you just described. And it's like I don't spend enough time looking at who is already a customer. What have they already bought? What else could I sell them that makes sense with the level of engagement or journey that they're on? I'm not listening enough to the people that are already giving me money and saying, what else is there? Are they going to come back? Why or why not? What's been there? Like, it's so much easier to sell more to the people you already have and grow them, who, by the way, then become your referral sources too, than to try to win just random cold prospects or traffic. Oh man, you're pretty smart. You got a real future at this. You got real future. You hang in there, Nigel. You're going places.
We have been in a bull market for so long.
Yeah.
These companies have just gotten so comfortable that there's just this endless supply of people that want to buy what you have.
Right.
And now the companies that are going to make it through this are spending most of their day with their existing customers. And that's what a bear market does, is it forces you to get really intimate with the people that already love what you do.
Yeah, add more value, get creative, do innovate, bring them more so that you're indispensable. This is brilliant stuff. So the book again, that's Nigel Green, brand new book, Revenue Harvest, a sales leader's almanac for planning the perfect year. The website for the book is therevenueharvest.com, and I'll link to that in the show notes. And yes, the one and only Mary Lou Tyler is front and center. Best-selling author, Predictable Revenue, is telling you how important this book is. It is amazing. It is amazing, Nigel. Any kind of final thoughts for our audience listening or watching around the topics we've been hitting on with sales, leadership, unpredictable conditions, the environment, the market, all that stuff?
What I would share with people listening is that I suspect the next 30 to 60 days are going to be just as challenging as the last 2 weeks have been. And so I think that, and I know this because I'm spending my entire day talking to executives that are preparing for it to get worse before it gets better. I want you to go buy the book, not because I need you to buy the book. I want you to go buy the book and think about how well you've planned, how well you've positioned, how well you prepared yourself in this new world. If you go buy the book, I'm going to give you an opportunity to spend an hour with me to ask ask me anything you want to ask me.
Wow.
And so,
you sure? Sorry. Like, wait, cut it. Like, you're going to unpack this. Now everyone's ears have perked up because we all want access, but you're going to give people access to you when they get the book. All right. Tell us more.
Okay. So I can't respond to all the LinkedIn messages that I'm getting. What should I do? Tell me what to. So what I've said is I want to help as many people as I can. Okay. Yes. I would like you to buy the book. So that's the gate. Okay. If you go buy this book, and oh, by the way, you can go get it anywhere you want, but it's always $10 more at Amazon or iTunes. If you come buy it from the Revenue Harvest, I'm going to sign it. So you get a book. I'm going to sign it. I'll give you the digital book for free. And then I'm going to let you jump in a group call with 4 or 5 other people. And we're going to just talk it through. I'm limiting all these sessions at 5 people to make sure you have a chance to not just ask a question, but I'll give you a response. You can push back. We can keep going. And oh, by the way, you'll meet some other leaders that you probably didn't know that are going through the same thing. So you're going to get a chance to build some community, meet some new friends. We're all working from home. Nobody's put on blue jeans in a long time. Everybody's wearing sweatpants. So you get a chance to meet some people. We'll learn. And so I'm doing that for the next 30 days. And so check it out. I think it'll be a lot of interesting conversations. And I'm hoping that some people get some answers quickly.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing. You're practicing what you preach. You're planting some seeds of value. You're demonstrating your expertise. Yes, people have a ticket to get in to get your time and attention, but it's very minimal to get this book. But what I love is, the idea behind you trying to scale your ability to help, because you're exactly right. One-on-one LinkedIn replies, one-on-one email replies, private conversations, that's not going to scale the same way that explaining that solution is to 5 people at once. And also, I love the idea too of bringing value, bringing people together that are kind of, going to maybe be able to make some connections. I think it's just brilliant. I think it's an example of what you're doing in this book is you're pivoting your plan, and you're not afraid to say, you know what, right now, what's something people are struggling with? Isolation. What's something we can't meet together? Well, let's meet online, but let's have some context for a conversation. It's almost like your own little Oprah's book club. I love it, man. It's like, it's brilliant.
Well, it may be, but let me say this. It's selfish. Okay. Here's one. And I mean, yeah, we can talk about, I'm helping people out. I spend my day in a good month traveling and spending an entire day with a team doing a sales team review. I don't get to do those anymore. So I've got my 20 or so sales leaders that I coach, but I'm sitting on a farm and isolated, and I want to stay connected. So this is also a chance for me to throw myself back into the marketplace and hear what other people are doing. I'll get better as a result of this. So anyone that's listening to say, oh, must be nice, right? We have all that, must be nice. You will learn more than you teach. If you're on the fence about doing this with your customers, just do it. I'm doing this to learn.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've known you for almost a decade. You're one of the best kind of listeners that I've met. Like you're genuinely curious in other people because you can learn something from anyone. And I think that's a mark of a good leader is you don't come in full of yourself and arrogant and telling everyone how you know it all. You're very much like the guy sitting back, listening, asking. And I think that's, kudos to you, and why you've been successful is you listen and then you apply and implement. So I can't believe you're going to offer that. Well, you've just moved up to production for this. Now I have to get this out right away. This will be something that I know people are going to love. So again, I will link to everything. Get the book from revenueharvest.com. And if you get it in the next 30 days from when we publish this video and podcast,
right. Yep.
Nigel is going to put you into a group of 5, do a kind of, I don't know how you call it, a call, talking, meeting, consulting. I just think it's incredible value. And it's a brilliant idea right now to kind of take the temperature of all these different professionals that you're going to meet selfishly and learn from. So brilliant, brilliant stuff. Nigel Green, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing this, being generous, bringing so much value, my man.
My pleasure.